5 o'clock dinner, way too early.
Yeah,
I can't
What are
properly
you?
eat food
What are you?
then.
80 years old?
That it's 5 o'clock's too early?
No, why are you eating at 5 o'clock? What are you?
So
80
that
years
so
old?
that I could get here for 7.
You didn't get here for 7.
Exactly. So imagine if I didn't have dinner at 5.
So hold on. Here's the real question. What time do you guys actually go to bed at?
I'm gonna go to bed at.
Yeah.
Why do you want to know?
Because I want to know if 5 o'clock, listen, if you're going to bed at 7 p.m., all of a sudden 5 p.m. dinner, it's late.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
I go to bed anywhere between, I'd say 11 and 1 in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. And what time zone are you in?
I don't know. EST, I think.
Yeah, you are. I'm just slowly paring down to your location.
You
I left in our city in the last episode.
I know you did.
All right.
We're actually, you're not in EST right now. Because we don't have daylight savings going on right now.
What does
EGT.
I don't know
Yeah.
how time zones work. I don't know much about geography. I don't really know a lot about.
Or
a
you
lot
could
of
just say
things.
ET, Eastern time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Extraterrestrial.
Yeah. I like to aim for 10:30 because I set my alarm for 5:45.
Okay.
Damn, respect.
But over.
Do you ever wake up for 5:45?
Yeah, every morning
Oh, that's
because
great.
my alarm's going off.
Oh, I usually go back to bed after the first alarm.
Oh, I definitely hit the
You
snooze.
suck.
I hit the snooze. So
You
I
guys
hit the
suck.
first snooze and then I get up at 6.
I get so mad at Julia because Julia will set an alarm every 5 minutes for the hour following
That's
her
me.
wake up.
That's
Yeah.
mad.
And so what she does is she wakes up and she'll either snooze or turn it off. But then she leaves it there. And I'm like, Julia, I'm not letting you back in this bed. Leave. Your alarm has gone off. I don't want you waking up. And then she's like, okay. And then she leaves and her phone goes off in the next 5 minutes.
Maddie sets alarms for like, okay, 8:51, 8:53, 9:02.
That's what snooze is for.
Just
Yeah.
wake up.
Yeah.
What is hard about that?
No.
agree,
I think
agree.
I do think you need a buffer time because it's hard to go from dead of sleep to like wide awake. So that's why I think like one snooze.
You know what?
minimum
I'll
for
go
me.
from dead of sleep to still tired, but vertical and not lying in bed.
I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times in the morning, especially when I wake up at 5 a.m.,
Yeah.
I feel sick. Like if I
feel
like
sick?
get up right away, I feel like
know that one.
especially when I like
See a doctor.
because I aim for 10:30, but sometimes you go to bed like 12:31, so you get 4 hours sleep, and that's like that's rough.
See, I was gonna say I stay up a lot later than you, but I know that I wake up a lot later than you.
Yeah.
I'm waking up at 9 a.m. and I'm going to bed at like 2:30.
Yeah,
So I'm like, that happens. I'm like, well, that's still 6 hours of sleep, like
Yeah.
6.5.
The routine I was in where I slept the best was I would go up to bed, and you guys are gonna make fun of me for this.
Yeah.
I'd go up to bed, I'd light a
You
candle.
have first of all, you'd have the most perfectly made bed. You know,
Yes,
this guy
I
makes his bed every morning.
I make my bed every morning. Yeah, straight up.
he kisses his vegan candles.
I would light a candle. I would stretch for about 10.
That's a real
15
one.
minutes.
That's actually the truth.
Stretch right before bed. It's
And in the
great.
morning,
I know I need to.
I don't stretch right
I've been
when I
missing
wake
my daily yoga.
I'm stretching right now, stretching these brain muscles.
That's good. That's good. I'd stretch and then I'd read like a chapter of a book and then I'd go to bed. And I'd sleep great. Sleep great. I also stopped drinking about an hour or 2 hours before.
To be clear,
sleeping.
you're not saying that you're an alcoholic. You're saying
No, no, no.
Drinking water. Drinking water.
Start of the day, he starts drinking immediately, 2 beers,
He
and
said,
then
he wakes up, he has a drink. He makes his bed, he has a drink.
Can I say, Maddie and I went to Barrie in New Year's. Don't put this in the podcast because
I'm putting it in the
I
podcast.
got it.
it's in the podcast.
So we went to Barrie for New Year's, and we went to the Rec Room, which is like a big arcade place.
Sure.
I think I talked to you guys about
Yeah.
it. I felt so weird being the only person that didn't drink until
Or
I realized.
eat flesh.
Well, that's true. Until I realized how much money I wasn't saving.
What a weird way of
you
saying
weren't
that.
saving.
Like I was not spending because you go out to drink and you're spending like what $8 minimum for each drink.
Okay.
Wait, why did you say you-
He's misspeaking. He was shocked how much money he saved
Okay.
by not drinking.
Well, I wasn't shocked.
I thought
but
the
was
story
just
was.
happy knowing that.
I thought the story was gonna be like he was spending so much money on non-alcoholic drinks that he was like, I'm not even saving money.
Well, here's what upsets me. Like, well, not upsets me, but I'm like, you're a brave man. I am thinking about going. You guys know Copacabana?
Yeah,
Yeah. So I've been thinking about going there with my friend.
in Niagara Falls.
They have a couple locations, but it's all you can eat meat, and if you go on a certain day of the week, you can
can't go.
pay a increased price
For steak.
in order to not just steak, but also all you can drink.
Oh yeah.
So, and then my friends are like, we want to go for the all you can drink night, and they invited like a group of 6 of us, and 3 of the group of 6 don't drink.
Nice.
Was Eric invited?
No.
Do they eat meat?
Well, they do eat meat. That's true. But I'm like, guys, let's just go on the non-drinking night and the three of us that drink will just pay for our drinks.
I'll go on the non-meat night.
Okay, this is
they
gonna be
they have a salad bar.
this is gonna be such an annoying theme now
What?
for the podcast.
What no? Like just the knowledge of the audience. Do you want me to cut the fact of what he is? Like
Sure.
How many points in time of this podcast is Jeremiah gonna be like, I'm a vegan, guys?
that's true. I gotta say, throughout how long have I known you now?
3 years.
I
I
don't
don't
think
say
it's
a
accurate.
year and a half.
year and a half. Let's say a year and a half. So throughout the year and a half I've known you, you've not mentioned that you were a vegan once, and yet now that you're not eating meat, you're mentioning you're a vegan all the time.
We went to Gen Con a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
You just met him?
We barely knew.
Well,
Jeremiah.
I didn't know him for.
We
very
thought-
long.
I barely knew him. I thought you guys were homies.
No,
we were friends.
That's
but,
why
like I
we,
knew.
we,
I knew
we
you
were
from
very
young.
fast friends.
I
You
knew
were
him for
standing
about-
over by me, and they were sitting in the
I
parking
remember,
lot.
and you were sitting in
And
my
I said-
chair.
And I was like, why don't we invite Jeremiah? Clearly you like him. So it sounds like
Why
a good
did you?
time.
Why did you say you wanted to invite me? You didn't know me.
Because
'Cause
I
I was
trusted
sad-
Ian's judgment.
I was sad that other people weren't going because I was like, I thought it was gonna be a big trip with like a bunch of us,
Yeah, yeah.
and then it kind of turned into
So glad it wasn't.
a really small thing.
Well, looking back on it, I don't know why I trusted Ian's judgment. Because it's not like I liked any of the other
You
community.
famously hated most of our community.
I still do. I don't know why I'm here right now. You bribed me to be here. I
Well,
wasn't
you
even
had
supposed to
to
be
think-
here.
You had to think of it like this: you drive 40 minutes eastbound from the location that I mentioned in the last episode to get here.
Northeast bound.
Northeastbound, just in case they're geocaching.
Yeah. Yeah,
So you've gotten further from the community you hate.
that's true. Not that I love the Mississauga. Not that I love the Mississauga
Redacted.
community.
Not,
Redacted.
not that we love the community.
The
40
Northeast
minutes-
community.
40 minutes northeast of the community that we are normally in.
No, actually though, I was talking with someone that lives in this area.
I don't care. I live in Mississauga. It's fine.
AP Mac,
Yeah.
Alex, regional champion.
Yeah.
And he's honestly just such a nice guy. Like, I just messaged him on Discord, and he was like, "Oh, I haven't heard from you in a while. How's life? How's it going? We missed you at Gen Con this year." And I was like, "You're just a really nice guy."
Yeah.
You tell him you got engaged?
I did, and he was popping off.
That's great.
Talking
You know,
about how happy he was for me.
AP Mac is notably a super nice guy. I will say I've always been nervous to go to Mississauga events
Yeah.
because I've had the most negative Digimon experiences with the Mississauga scene.
I had someone try to fight me.
I remember
He
that.
kicked the table at me.
Yeah.
He was moving that table towards me. Yeah, I was like, "This is a guillotine coming at me."
I think I got scared off of card games because of the Mississauga community because I played Vanguard here, also at Untouchables. And back then, I was like, wow, card game players are fucking weird and like do not deserve human contact. And I just
Hasn't
stopped.
changed. Has not changed.
Yeah, it's funny. We were actually talking about that at work today. And then they said, it could be worse. We could be Smash players.
So you guys picked up my Card Fight Vanguard cards earlier,
Okay.
and they were
Very tiny.
They were very small.
They're very-
Now, when I was a kid, I played Yu-Gi-Oh! As my first card game. I was like, wow, I can shuffle these cards. This is so nice. And then, I had Pokemon cards, which are standard card size, but it wasn't until Duel Masters where I started playing with cards that size and was like, these are harder to shuffle than Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. And in that case, my solution wasn't to grow up and figure life out and learn to shuffle cards better. No, it was to grab my Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, grab the Duel Masters cards, and actually take scissors and cut the Duel Masters
You
cards
cut your
down.
cards to fit?
However,
You know what? That's actually the lesser of the two evils. I thought he was going to say my solution was to pile shuffle.
my solution was not to just trim it and use a Yu-Gi-Oh card as a reference. It was to just approximate. Just be like, yeah, this looks like the right number.
Your
to
parents
cut.
were like not worried about the value of the cards.
They
at all?
didn't care. They're my cards. My parents grew up playing, like, they used to throw cards at walls and stuff. For their
I
games.
also. Are you telling me you didn't learn how to throw cards?
Well, no.
Wait,
not
but what
really.
about like your other toys? Did your parents not care if you just like smash them around and stuff and broke them?
I don't know.
Did your parents care if you took scissors to Gabe?
I don't remember.
Everything I owned was so precious.
Gabe shot a Beyblade into my garage before.
That's a good dexterity though.
I straight up like murdered my old deck of Duel Masters cards.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I didn't do with my Pokemon cards because that would have been awful. Like,
Were they worth anything? Did you like?
Well, so there's some base set cards that I had in there. They weren't great condition, but they weren't like chopped around the outside. They weren't circumcised.
Yeah. Well, I went. I think I told you this before, but I went back to like my old Magic cards after having not played in a long time and having played Draft, And I was like, I'm going to get into some other games. And I got my buddy to just go through a bunch of my bulk with me for my drafting days. And, I love Purple Decks and Digimon.
Yeah.
So I loved Black Decks and Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like 2 or 3 Liliana of the Veils, which I was like, oh, I see online that there are Lilianas that are worth $2 and Lilianas that are worth $200.
Yep.
So I have no idea from my lack of knowledge about the card
You gotta
market.
know that little symbol in the bottom right corner that tells you what set it's from. You gotta know that little symbol right
That's
there.
the one that does it.
Yep.
So long story short, I made $202.
Nice, that's not bad. I was worried you were gonna say $4. 202 is pretty good.
Yeah, so I went out. I got a Commander deck and I got a Pokemon starter deck, and then I didn't play Commander. I didn't play Pokemon, so it was a good investment.
Did you play Yu-Gi-Oh? And then did you follow up, grab your Magic cards, and cut them
Cut
around
them.
the corner?
Well, see, my thing is I came from Magic, so when I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I played Ghost Trick. I told you before. So what I did is I got sticky tack and I put it around the edge of my Yu-Gi-Oh card to make it large
Make it
enough.
bigger?
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Errata Sonata podcast. I'm Noah.
I don't like Yu-Gi-Oh that much.
I like Yu-Gi-Oh, but I'm also Ian.
I'm Jeremiah.
Jeremiah, what card games do you like that much?
Duel Masters. No. I cut all those cards in half. No, I like every card game to an extent. I like the fact they're cards. Future Card Buddy Fight's cool.
Do you like games because they're card games? Or do you like card games because you enjoy how they play?
I don't like all card games. Like, just because something is on trading cards doesn't mean, like, I want to go play it. It's like, if it has interesting mechanics to me, then...
Oh, interesting. You've never played Major League Baseball?
It does feel like when you look for games on Steam, you search out digital card games.
Yeah, you do. You like deck builders and roguelikes.
Deck building roguelike games, yeah, I think are good. Yeah, they're really fun. I mean, I think the thing that does it for me is, like, card games have a level of strategy and problem solving that vary every single time. It's like puzzle solving every turn, I'd say. Like, my favorite thing in Hearthstone was a lot of the time just like trying to like solve a board.
So
It's like, how do I trade effectively? How do I get the most damage in for what I'm doing? How do I get the most value out of my cards? How do I spend it in accordance with like how much mana I have at a time?
Yeah, all the little micro decisions
Yeah.
add up, and it makes for a fun little
see,
mini game within the game.
that's actually exactly what this is kind of convenient because that's what I was going to talk about today, which is the idea of agency in card games.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that, like, coming over from a fighting game perspective, I have always had a sensation that I should have access to every tool I have in my toolkit available at all points in time. There's obviously exceptions, super meter, and sometimes like moves have to come after other moves. But card games are built on the exact opposite mantra, which is I have a 50 card deck, and in hand on turn 1, I have 5 of them. Mm-hmm. And of those 5, half, sometimes all of them are not playable.
Yeah.
And that is a very different dynamic because I don't get to make the same amount of choices. And yes, I have to solve a puzzle, but I don't always want to solve a puzzle. Sometimes I just want to be able to present things to the board.
Play Digimon.
Play Digimon, but it's just true. Digimon will allow me to play an ultimate on turn 1 if I want to.
You coming from fighting games gives you like a lot of objectivism, I think, when it comes to how you make your decisions. I think the same thing happens. Like, I played a lot of chess during the
I know, 4 hours a week.
A little bit. Yeah, I played a lot of chess. Not that I got good at chess, but I started to like really appreciate what it was because I was making these strategic decisions, but I didn't have to rely on like, oh well, hopefully I draw this because it'd be really good. I just had like correct moves available to me, and it's like you either make the right play in that board state or you don't.
I think part of what makes chess more boring to me is that you obviously get the deviations, but a lot of the game comes down to established openings and then closers and then the mid game. And I think the mid game is where the
early
most
game, the mid game, the late game. Mm-hmm. I just want a game.
Yeah. Well, the mid game I think is where the most deviations are, and it's funny because in my head I'm thinking about solving a Rubik's cube right now, and so much of it comes down to algorithms. But there's that middle stage where you're doing the first 2 layers, and that's where it's the most like free form. You can use algorithms for the whole thing, but that part is my favorite part of the Rubik's cube, and I'm sure it's the best part of chess is the mid game. And card games are kind of like that the whole time. Mm-hmm. There's that randomness that you have to problem solve because it's not just, oh, this is my opening, pawn to e4, knight to I only know Planet E4.
There are significantly fewer states of the game where you go, I've seen exactly this before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially because at the end of the day, in most situations, I've not seized my opponent this turn. I don't know what they're holding on their grip.
Yeah.
Coming from fighting games, I'm used to the idea that at the start of the round, I'm able to do everything in my toolkit. And what I choose to do is determines what I like to do. But then I go over to card games and I go, I have 5 cards in my hand. And half of them are unplayable. And maybe 2 of them are lands.
I'm going to say this right now. If you two boot up Mealy, Jeremiah's going to feel like he has 0 agency in the game.
Oh, because you think he's just going to get slapped around?
Yeah.
That's true, but just because he made choices that put him into a bad situation doesn't mean he didn't make choices.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Right, but during that bad situation, because you said having the ability to do something throughout every stage of the game, and I guess technically you got DI, you got SDI, but he's in mid combo hit stun, he's done. He can DI and that's it. And a lot of times, first of all, he's probably not even gonna know about DI, and second of all, he's gonna feel like he has 0 agency.
Maybe, but I still think that he made choices at each point in the game to get him to that point. And even if there is a punish window, because obviously in most fighting games you don't have DI, you have at most burst.
Yep.
The fact that he made choices, every available tool in his arsenal, sometimes you gotta just hold it.
All right, you know what? This podcast feels like it's going to be a debate night because I think that you two are on one side of this and I'm on a slightly different angle for this. Because
you've not played a lot of fighting games.
No, it's just Smash and a little bit of like Street Fighter and some Pokken and Tekken. But okay, maybe a little bit more fighting games, but
it's way more than me.
I'm talking about agency here because your initial definition is being able to
make choices.
Yeah, at every step of the way. But then you just talked about how his decisions, his choices led him to a spot where he's unable to make those choices in the moment, right?
Yeah, he's entered a different game state through which now his choices are much more limited or restricted in some way.
Now, to me, I view card games, whereas even card games where you don't have instant speed, so what you do on your turn is what you get to do. I view those as the choices, the agency that you make leads you to the position that you end up in.
Well, that's like chess, right? You make a move and then you wait for your opponent to respond.
Exactly, and I think that's still definitely a form of agency. I don't know how much people enjoy it.
Well, so I was thinking about this earlier. The reality is like if you play, I'm gonna keep going back to fighting games. That's obviously where my background is. In a lot of fighting games, there's characters that have randomized mechanics. Like they'll use a special move and it'll do variable amounts of damage, or sometimes a different attack will come out, or startup will be different. So Faust is a good example where he summons different items, and you don't know what's going to summon until...
Faust is who from what?
Faust is a guy who looks like me, Diaboromon, from Guilty Gear.
Oh, no, I know Faust. Wait,
yeah, you do know Faust. He's got a paper bag on his head.
Yes.
So he summons random items.
That's so sick. I gotta say, paper bag on your head, maybe with a cutout or a drawn-on face, such a sick... Honestly...
And he's a medical doctor.
I love face covering designs on characters.
Tokyo Ghoul head?
Yeah, like Mr. F... in Pocket Paragons, he's got like that smiley face mask. I just think masks are
You're a big Assassination Classroom fan?
Yeah, I actually haven't seen that, but the smiley face guy, I want to watch it. And I played World of Warcraft a lot, right? And every single character I had always had some kind of face covering. Just I don't know why. Kakashi head.
I think it's fun. I think it's fun to like cover up. But anyways, I was saying Faust. He presents information to both my opponent and me at the same point in time, and that is a bit of randomness. And that is a bit of hidden information. But we both get access to that hidden information at the same time. Mm-hmm. So we both are able to react in real time to whatever comes out. The difference between that and card games is there's hidden information. So you might know that you only have 5 rookies in hand and you're just, all you can do is go in on me. But from my side of the table, you put down an Agumon and an Agumon X and I'm like, I'm sweating.
Yeah.
Sounds like what you want is Beelzemon. Let's mill 3 cards and we'll both get access to the info at the same time.
Well, it is actually, I think, a large part of why I go towards purple. I think that it changes a lot of the game into an open information state. Mm-hmm. And having more of the game be a nullable game state to both players allows more interaction to occur. Which I think, from my background, is something I tend to lean towards.
I guess. I think if we're touching on Digimon here, think that the open information just instills a sense of dread in the person.
Good.
Because we have, like, you say it's open information and there's more interaction, but the reality is there's very little trash interaction at the moment.
So let's talk about game we want to shout out. Pocket Paragon.
Because yes,
We've talked about it
a
before.
fighting game card game, something to merge our worlds.
Yeah, so the three of us we went to Indiana for Gen Con.
For Gen Con.
And we found
We met Brian McKay.
Yeah, we stumbled upon Brian McKay in Solus Game Studios. They have a card game called Pocket Paragons. It's a fighting game card game
which is one of few. To be fair, it is not the only concept like that. We have Yomi, we have Exceed, we have BattleCon, I think it is. There's definitely other games that have tried that idea.
But most of these games, and the reason Pocket Paragon stands out to me is because it's not a full deck of cards. Your moveset is relegated to 6 cards, all of which are standard symbols across all characters.
Yes, technically a full deck of 6 cards.
It's a full deck of 6 cards, but it's not. You have all card. You start the game with all the cards in your deck available to you.
Well, for most characters.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say for most people, it is functionally not a card game because there's no shuffle at any point in Pocket
No,
Paragons.
you just pick up and play.
Which
is great.
Yeah, cards are tokens, but there's no need for them to be cards. I think the defining element of cards is the act of shuffling.
I shuffle the cards in my hand.
Sure.
So that when you counter me and bounce it back to my hand, and then I go to put down a card, you don't know which one it is.
So the way the game is played is both players put down one of the cards from their hands simultaneously, face down, and then they reveal it, and you look at the symbols and decide which move counters which. Yeah.
It's funny that you guys are talking about this because I wanted to talk about interaction tonight because I think that falls under the blanket of agency.
For sure.
And I was discussing with somebody what they think interaction is, and that's that's basically being able to make choices during your opponent's turn.
Yes.
And answer anything that they do during your opponent's turn. And to me, I was like, Pocket Paragons, play your turns at the same time. Yeah. That's maximum interaction right there.
It is very high level. Simultaneous turns is a very unique game idea that I actually don't think I've seen very much in card games. Mm-hmm. Usually it's Runeterra.
I've played Runeterra. Runeterra is my favorite one that is done.
Runeterra isn't really simultaneous turns though.
No, it is.
But you're passing like the active...
People have different priorities, but yes, like
you have turns.
Yeah, functionally your turns are being played at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, like you get a reset. Both players share their mana pool, and their mana pool resets at the start of the round. And you take turns playing cards back and forth. See, now I lost my flow. I don't know.
Do you want me to try?
Go ahead.
Pocket Paragons is it's really a card game in name only. You have 6 cards in your deck, and you don't shuffle them up. You just pick up all 6 cards, and you'll decide every turn. You look at I've got a rock, I got a paper, I got a scissors, I got 3 others. We're not going to get into them. I'm going to play one of them, and my opponent will play one of their 6 as well, and we face down, and we will both reveal simultaneously what cards we chose, and then a battle between those cards will occur. Mm-hmm. And sometimes my card will counter your card, which will give me an energy, which is very akin to a fighting game super meter. Mm-hmm. And other times we'll just resolve damage. Both of us, get to hit out on each other. That's all that really occurs. And then once you've used a card, it goes to your discard pile, and you have to face up, and you have to play a special card, a rest card, to get all of your cards back. Mm-hmm. So the game really cycles as we have a deck, quote unquote, but they're just tokens. They're not cards. I don't shuffle them up. My opponent knows everything I have access to. And most importantly, with what I was saying before, I have access to every ability from the first turn of the game.
What card games have their trash, discard, whatever you want to call it, graveyard face down?
Very rare, but there are games that have cared about the order of their trash.
Right. I was just wondering because I feel like he specified face up for Pocket Paragons, and I think it's a common thing with newer players when they play games to put their trash or discard, graveyard, whatever, face down. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering where that desire, that want comes from.
I think it's just the thought that it's just out of the game. Like a lot of new players probably just think of their discard as being like, it's a discard. I'm not going to touch it again. Yeah. And it actually takes a little bit of awareness of card games to know, hey, discard is a zone. It's not actually a removed from game location. Mm-hmm.
So you guys don't have any card games off the top of your head that...
None in my experience.
No. Okay. There are card games that
exile face down.
Yeah,
like Yu-Gi-Oh does that.
Yeah, they exile cards face down.
Okay.
Like remove them from the game face down. But the reason I wanted to make that distinction of face up is because each card you play your opponent knows what's left in your hand.
Yes.
They know that every character has their rock, paper, scissors, and then 3 other cards. Either rest, execute, and your shield.
Yes.
Or rock or paper or scissors.
Rivals characters, they have 2 of elements, but they don't have a shield.
They do. Yes, you're right. Okay, so in most cases, you know what your opponent has based on what's in their discard pile. So it influences your decision going forward. That allows for a little bit more agency about what your next play is going to be because you have more information available to you. So more information, but not necessarily more choices to make. Your choices also get limited as you play the game too, but you understand what your opponent might do and what their agency is a little bit better, which helped inform yours. So less cards, less pieces involved can actually present a better agency for you as a player.
What is agency to you? Because we heard Ian talk about it. What is it to you?
Agency is how many decisions you get to make during any given period of a game. So
Also, it's a number of decisions to you.
well, I think it's just like the availability of making decisions.
Okay.
How often are you allowed to make decisions, and how many decisions are available to you?
Yeah.
I think it's just having decisions there for you to make, versus just not being able to play the game.
So I think there's a good example from a game that we all played. The sensation that we all got, I think early on in Digimon, there was a lot more of this. Just feeling like, okay, there's no boosts in the game. There's no trainings in Digimon back then. We just felt like, hey, all I want to be able to do is put a rookie down and then go into a champion on my first turn. I just want to build up. I just want to build up and give my opponent as few resources as possible. I think a lot of games feel like that. You play Magic, you're playing a black deck, I want to put down a Swamp, I want to Thought Seize.
Yeah.
That's a great first turn.
It's a great opening. Yeah.
So the reality is within Magic, if I don't have enough mana on my first turn, I can't cast the spells in my hand.
Yeah.
In Digimon, if I don't have a rookie, I'm gonna have to overpay to put something on the board. I think that happens a lot in card games where you have only one reasonable choice.
3-cost champions though.
3-cost champions do help. Play a Numemon, put a free Satsuki underneath it.
It's funny. Recently I saw somebody talking online about how they would like for it was in a post about people calling Digimon cards garbage because the bulk is worthless to them, and someone talked about how they wish they made uncommons and commons better. And there are quite a few powerful uncommon and commons. A lot of time.
Well, especially in BT14.
Yeah, a lot of times it's kind of what makes the deck tick.
Yeah.
It's not the boss monster, but it's the engine, right?
Yeah, of course.
But they brought up how it'd be cool to see 5-cost ultimates because I think they said it would be more value and they don't think it'd be too strong. And you can tell it's a newer player because we do have that.
We used to run them a lot.
Yeah, we used
also
to have
the aces that just came out.
Right, but they're talking about vanillas right now and uncommon commons.
Sure.
But yes, we do have the 4-cost aces.
Sirenmon.
Yeah,
Sirenmon
exactly.
But Sirenmon is also
Monzemon.
Monzemon, yeah. And it's interesting to see that someone saying they don't think it'd be too broken because it was a card that even back then was not too powerful. It was nice to put in the deck, and now we're at a point where you're never going to see them. No. Realistically, you're never going to see a 5-cost vanilla.
No. Because on paper, really all it's presenting is, would you like to pay 1 memory for all of this text on this card? And the effects on cards are just strong enough that 1 memory, you'll take it every time.
Yep.
In fighting games, I've got 50 moves that I have access to. Some of them are better or worse. So even some of them, I might just be like, okay, well, this isn't a reasonable move to do. It's punishable on block. It's not enough reward. It's just risky as a whole. But just because it's a bad move, there are situations that it will be good in. And the fact that I have the ability to make that choice matters to me.
Well, in Pocket Paragons, that's another kind of it's a parallel, right, with fighting games, but because you're playing an exhaustion system of like you play an ability and it's represented by a card, and then that card is no longer in your hand, it's in the discard pile. You no longer have the ability to make that move, whereas in a fighting game, you can just input the action again. But in Pocket Paragons, you have to wait until you can rest to get the ability back to do that. And in getting your abilities back is not as simple because there's the whole execution mechanic.
Yeah.
So, like, if your opponent plays the right card when you're resting to try to get your cards back, you just lose the game.
It's interesting because right now, myself and a lot of fighting game players are playing Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising. Because we just love adding, additional words to the end of fighting games.
Makes a different game. Don't put 2 anymore.
But Grand Blue in particular has cooldowns as a part of its system, like similar to like League of Legends cooldowns for special moves.
Yeah.
So we are going through a situation similar to that, where like once we've used a move, we're locked out from it. sometimes it's so fast that it's irrelevant, and sometimes it is agonizingly slow, and I'm like, all right, I'll see you in 10 seconds. Special move.
Do you have CDR in Grand Blue?
Cooldown reduction moves.
Yeah.
So no. There used to be cooldown extension. For like you would influence your opponent's cooldowns if you took certain actions, but I don't think it's in this version of the game functionally at all.
Now I have a question for that because for cooldown extension, to you that's agency on your part, right? Because now you get to influence
I've taken an action that influences my opponent.
Now when you take that action, do you think you're taking away agency from your opponent?
I see what you're saying. No. I tried to express this a bit earlier, but I think that there's a pretty big difference between punishing a mistake and removing agency. The reality is they've put themselves in a situation where their move is on cooldown. That was done with the knowledge that their cooldown could be extended.
Mm-hmm.
So they put themselves in that situation.
Right.
And they could have avoided it if they had truly wanted to.
Yeah, I think that goes along with again my earlier comment about reading about interaction online, and somebody was talking about how Digimon has no interaction. Recently they introduced Blast Evos, and that's some interaction because their definition is being able to make choices on your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
And so to them, somebody mentioned how Yellow Vaccine has a lot of interaction because it's a slower deck. There's much more back and forth. And he said that Venusmon is the opposite of interaction because it makes it so that you can't do anything. You can't interact with them.
I disagree with that entirely.
Yeah, there were some interesting takes.
Yeah.
Because to me, interaction is anytime you interact with the opponent, right?
Yeah.
So if I swing over one of your suspended Digimon, I'm interacting with you.
Yeah.
You made a choice to suspend it. I made a choice to swing over it. And just because you can't stop that doesn't mean that there was no interaction in it.
I mean, interaction versus agency. Agency is like your ability to make the choice, and then interaction is like how your choice affects another individual.
So,
right?
So with that discussion in mind, so similar to the cooldown extension, if I use a cooldown and then you extend it on me, I can't do anything to stop you from extending it, right?
Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
I've already used the cooldown.
Yeah.
So I had no agency in you extending my cooldown.
Yeah.
But I had agency when I chose to use the cooldown. Now, does that mean that I didn't have agency in the situation, or I did? It was just present earlier.
It was present earlier. A choice you made had a consequence,
right?
And that consequence is being capitalized on by your opponent.
So in card games, even when I can't do something on my opponent's turn, I still view myself as having full agency because
I get where you're coming from. I do agree with you. I don't think that Digimon is a game that has low or no agency. I actually but what it does come down to is ultimately there are more complex choices that often come about as a result of the presence of instant speed cards. A good example with Magic is leaving mana untapped in order to prepare for a counterspell during your opponent's turn. So I've fundamentally played below tempo. I'm playing a slower game than I should have been playing, but I'm leaving myself open to make more choices during your turn once more information is revealed.
You're also bluffing. Like, what if you don't have a way to interact with your
At the
opponent?
end of the day, if I'm playing a blue deck and I have no second turn play, that's pure bluff.
Yeah,
I'm just
I'm
like
holding a counter.
I'm bluffing that I'm holding a counterspell, and that's it.
But does that make, if say your opponent casts a creature, right, one of their best cards, they play a creature, and then you counter it, was them playing into that like a wrong decision?
No, in fact, what I would refer to that as frequently what happens in Magic is people bait out counters. They bait out responses because they're like, hey, if you're playing a combo deck.
Well, so I think what he's saying is that if you're playing your best creature into the counter, then that was a misplay. Mm-hmm. And what they should have done was bait, like you're describing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. Okay, yeah. But then they may not have access to anything to bait with. And that's where we get into, again, card games. They are closed information systems. Mm. And those closed information systems necessitate a level of randomness in decks.
Who doesn't like to gamble? I have to say, sometimes you just have to say, well, I hope they don't have this in hand.
Well, that's the thing is, like, if my card sticks on the board, then
I
I'm
win the
really
game.
good position,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If they can't remove this, then I'm just gonna run away with the game.
That is a fun part of card games.
That's what's exactly. That's
you guys like the reveal. I don't like the reveal. I don't like the if you have played this card, you win. I like the
well, no, it's not necessarily that, but it's more of a risk or reward type situation where I'm saying that this is a risky maneuver. If they don't have the answer to it, I'm very well rewarded. But if they do, I'm set back. So where do where do I decide when it's worth it?
That's something that in Digimon like you guys know, I really don't like turning my card sideways for game. I very much will like wait an extra turn to like get a surefire victory, just in case they have like a Crimson Blaze in security, or I mean that's the other thing is that security exists. But the thing with Digimon is I don't want to turn sideways because I don't want the reveal moment. Oh, they didn't even have the card in hand; they had it in security, and it's auto triggered and lost me my position.
I used to be very much like that. Obviously, I started playing Hearthstone, and I started watching when I started playing the game. I was introduced to a YouTuber goes by the name of Trump.
Ben?
Trump HS.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the ex-con president, whatever he goes by nowadays.
Yeah.
But he had a series where he was playing a very fast aggro deck where the general consensus was, it was called Face Hunter, and the general consensus was always just do damage to face.
Yeah, you
just
hunt face.
Keep attacking. They put something on the board, attack their face if you can. If you have to attack it, kill it, and then attack their face. That is just how you play.
Yeah.
And the reason he was doing this was he felt that a lot of times when he played the game, he would always go for the surefire, safe value. Some is how he described it sometimes, but just always that guarantee he would go for.
Yeah.
And then the problem with card games is you have hidden information, and so if you wait too long for the guarantee, you get smacked.
Yeah.
And so I think I used to be a lot like that until I was exposed to that series. And it's still something that I had to work on when I started playing Digimon was I was waiting too long.
Yeah.
I mean, my first tournament, I think I had like 5 draws in. I was playing
Yeah.
green, and I would Nidhogg something, and I'd clear the board, and then I would not swing that Nidhogg. And then I'd build up another Nidhogg.
Which is so funny because if there's a card that you can swing without consequence, it's a post-burst Nidhogg.
Yeah.
It's doing nothing for you.
But I was so scared of security. What's going to come out of there?
Yeah.
A tamer maybe, something that's going to give them tempo. And so it was definitely an interesting journey to find, because every player is different, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you definitely have to weigh that risk reward, and I enjoy that a lot in card games.
But I will say that like Digimon as a game is something that presents a choice to you when you're faced with like, do I attack security or not? But the outcome is like 100% no. Like there's no agency on whether or not.
But we just discussed that when you use a cooldown, there's your choice. If someone cooldown extends you, there's no agency in that, but you had agency. You made a decision.
I will say like the most non-agency thing I can think about in Digimon is using something like Ancient Greymon coming from Raising with like a bunch of cards in the stack that hits over 25k DP and is immune to security options, and swinging into your opponent's security stack, clearing everything, and then just playing Blitz Omnimon for game. You have no say in what happens there.
You did have say, right? You had turns leading up to it.
We talked about this with the loop deck. That's a matter of fighting the setup, not the loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's similar to how I want to say when I was younger, but I wasn't that much younger. But I was still in high school, and I was going down a hill on my longboard, and I did not realize how steep it was. And I was picking up some speed, started getting the speed wobbles, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to step off this longboard because this is going a lot faster than I enjoy. And I've done this a million times where I'll just jump off my longboard.
Have you hurt yourself a lot?
No.
No? Okay, I was going to say, like, this feels like I've broken my leg before and I've learned better.
I run beside my longboard because, you have to keep the speed that you were going. And I scoop up my longboard and then I slow down and I start walking. So I'm going too fast. And I said, I'm scared. I'm going to get off the longboard now. And as soon as my foot touched the pavement, boom, face plant. Like I smacked because I was going fast.
Yeah, you were face hunting.
And I was not thinking about the fact that, I'm taking grade 12 university physics. An object in motion will remain in motion.
Sure.
Until
nice flex, though.
Yeah. I did super well in that class. And I just smacked it in the ground. My longboard went flying. I was covered in blood and cuts. I had no agency once I touched the ground. Mm-hmm. I was falling.
But at the end of the day, you chose
exactly
to drag your foot.
I chose to step off the longboard. And so you choosing to swing security, that was the agency. Mm-hmm. Whatever outcome you have after that, that's the result of your agency. That's the result of your decision, the decision that you made.
Would it feel better if you when you attack your opponent,
yep,
if they have the opportunity to play a card in response? before revealing security.
Like Blast Evo,
Something like that, yeah.
like counter timing.
Does it feel better for you as the attacker if your opponent?
The thing
has
is,
agency
I'm an agency head myself. I'm an instant speed head myself.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I don't think that you lack agency in that moment. The truth of the matter is, the moment that's the lowest agency is a wyvern's breath gets revealed in security. I have to kill something. Yes, I can technically choose anything on field,
but you have to choose something.
But I have to choose something.
Right.
Like we've both been forced into a scenario that neither of us had really any control over.
Well, I think about something like Lilymon Ace, right?
Sure.
Where like her impact isn't nearly as high as something like Zudamon Ace, but does that mean that it's bad that you had the option of playing her? Like, if the impact of what you do is low, does that mean you shouldn't have the choice at all, or is it like a better thing that you have the choice to play the card even though
The choice is always useful.
Yeah,
though.
I don't think that's what we're saying here, though.
Okay.
What we're saying is just that you did make the choice, and now at a certain point, even in instant speed card games, at a certain point you have to accept that if I counterspell and you counterspell and I counterspell and you counterspell, eventually we're gonna run out of cards.
And we both start with, I'll take Magic for this example, 7 cards in hand. The reality is like, yeah, like there's only so many counterspells before we're out of cards in hand.
Yeah, eventually
and
you reach
over.
a point where you have no action to make. You have no more agency.
For sure.
And so in Digimon, when you swing at security, whatever is revealed, that's the point there. And so I think it's immutable. You can't avoid eventually running out of agency. Mm-hmm. And so I think your opponent being able to respond to you attacking, and then I respond to his response, and then he responds to my response, and that's just the stack, right?
Yeah.
But we're still going to eventually run out. So how many points do you want to insert the response timing into the game? Right.
So I think what might be helpful, because we've played quite a few games, some together, some separately. Mm-hmm. I'm just started thinking about them. Like Pocket Paragons, I think we've identified, at least for what me and Jeremiah are looking for, seems to achieve the most of what we would refer to as agency. Because the reality is, nothing happens that we don't have control over, and everything we have control over has consequence on the game.
Hey man, I love Pocket Paragons. I'm the champion.
Yeah, you are the world champion.
Yeah, I am the world champion.
Yeah, but so that's what I'm saying. Like Pocket Paragons achieves that to a great degree. And what I was gonna say is, we've played Battle Spirits, we've played Digimon, I've played Pokemon, I played Magic, too. I played Commander, I played Exceed, I played Fighting, I played Smash. The reality is, these games all have different amounts of control of agency. Mm-hmm. And I just want to see from your guys' side, these games I've not interacted with, what you guys actually feel did achieve agency a lot more clearly than what we've been playing.
You want to talk about agency? I remember, it's funny that you bring up Wyvern's Breath, that you had to choose a target.
Yeah.
I remember starting Digimon and Gaia Force and Security.
Yeah.
And to me, when I picture Gaia Force, I picture Ragnaros and Hearthstone sending out his giant fireball at...
I don't actually know Ragnaros. So catch me up.
So Ragnaros is an 8 cost, 8 health, 8 damage minion. Can't attack.
Okay.
But...
So it's like a big blocker?
No. Because not every minion can block.
Yes. Okay.
At the end of your turn, it'll send out a fireball that does 8 damage to a random enemy.
So if they have an empty board, you deal 8 damage to 8
face.
You face hunt, as you say.
Yeah. So it's this equivalent of you just having attacked with Ragnaros. But it's random. You have no control over it. So to me, Gaia Force flipping security, I'm like, that should be random. You don't get to choose my best Digimon.
You're a lot more open to randomized mechanics. I do wonder if that's because of your time with Hearthstone.
I think it is. But looking at it now, would I want that randomness in Digimon? No, probably not. But I think that randomness exists. There's no way to escape RNG. It's present in all games.
Yeah, it's especially present in every card game, because at the end of the day, if I'm drawing cards off the top of my deck,
right.
I've randomized my access to abilities.
Except for Pocket Paragons.
Except for Pocket
Paragons.
Paragons.
Think about Pocket Paragons versus Exceed. Both fighting games, both have a system where X beats Y. But in Pocket Paragons, you have all of your stuff available to you, and everything is open information. Whereas in Exceed, you actually draw cards from a deck.
Very similar to Yomi, by the way.
Right, yeah, and your moves are the only ones you can play are the ones that are in your hand at that time.
Yes.
So it's not like you're playing a fighting game where you're like, okay, here I'm going to jab, and my opponent's going to respond with whatever. You go, I don't have jab in my hand. I can't jab.
No, and
whereas in Pocket you can, but it's just going to be on cooldown until you can get it back.
Yeah, so I know that I've heard that Exceed has been described before as, because there's no deck building in Exceed. Exceed, you are given a deck, That is your character. That is your kid. You can shuffle it up, and obviously you have randomized access to your abilities. But your opponent has perfect knowledge of what your abilities
They actually
are.
get a move card. Tells you all of their moves.
Yes, so that way,
And-
this is everything they could possibly do.
And you all share the same basic abilities.
Yes.
I think Pocket Paragons is actually one of the only games I can think of with zero randomness in it. And
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any of the newer expansion cards. If they have any like roll the dice.
No,
kind of thing.
I have not seen any randomness be introduced into the game.
Because-
It's a completely open information game, with the exception of tournament format, where you inherit abilities from other characters.
Yes, but that's still not random.
No, it's a choice that you make, but it's
Yeah.
hidden information from your opponent.
Right, but even if you look at something like chess, right? The starting player is randomly determined.
Yeah.
And Pocket Paragon doesn't even have that. It avoids that
There
entirely.
was no first turn advantage. That's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
I think that Pocket Paragon does a phenomenal job of avoiding RNG.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's really interesting though, because like with Exceed, with
Yomi with
any game like that, the idea is that you all have the same abilities and you know exactly what your opponents do. Therefore, your level of agency is higher. But it's not true, because you don't have all of your options available to you to make those choices, even though they're available to you. So you know what you can do, you know what beats what, but you just can't make them at the time.
Well, I think that's part of because you mentioned earlier in Pocket Paragons, as your opponent has more cards in trash in their discard, your agency goes up because you know more of what's in their hand. But I think you're conflating agency with knowledge, and I think they are two different things, right? Because as you just said with Exceed, just because you know all the cards in their deck, you don't know. That doesn't mean you have access to all of them. At
Yeah,
once.
I actually I think that's a good point. Actually,
right.
Because when we're saying Pocket Paragons, we're saying we have access to every card that in our deck, and we can like choose any of them. If I'm talking about Magic, I have access to every card in my hand, but I also can't choose every one of them because I can only play on curve. That's based on my mana base. And then I'm talking about Exceed. I'm saying, well, I have access to every card in my deck, but I only have a certain subset of them available in my hand to play. So even if it's in my hand, I can play anything. I can only play that subset. So it definitely is access to abilities, and then those abilities having meaningful differences in when I choose them matters. I was told a long time ago that if you want to break fighting games down to their simplest format, just think about rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors is a randomized game. You know, obviously we all have preferences. I'm a paper turn one guy.
Is
Big
rock
rock
paper
head.
scissors a randomized game?
Yeah, you have an equal chance of winning with any choice. Two people playing against each other, it is a randomized outcome. I was told a long time ago, because it's a game that we played on a train, and it is play rock, paper, scissors. So when you play rock, paper, scissors, it's randomized, but if you add any noise to that system, it becomes non-random. And the best example of it is, we're going to play rock, paper, scissors until one of us has won twice with the same throw. So if I've won two games of rock, paper, scissors with rock, I win the match. If I've won two with scissors, I win the match. If you won two with paper, you win the match.
When you said noise, you didn't mean literal noise.
No, I just mean confusion to the system, something to influence our decision making.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that amount of influence means that even though the first throw is random, me and Jeremiah play, I win with paper. And we've established our pattern. I win with paper.
You got it.
He now is scared of paper, which means he doesn't like to use rock.
I see what you're saying.
And he knows that I like paper, so he's incentivized to use scissors.
This is what I was going
And
to bring up.
that dynamic, all that noise has done, has completely changed what was a randomized system into a fighting game where I'm trying to outthink him and he's trying to outthink me. If you watch any competitive game of death, anime or whatever you want to say, they'll say, at one point, they'll say, let's play rock, paper, scissors. And then one character will turn to the other and he'll say, I'm going to play rock. He introduces noise. He threatens his opponent. And that noise is what makes it interesting.
I mean, agency is important in gaming because you have a set of rules that are given to you and it says you need to act within this box. And you're like, okay, well, can I make this decision? No. Can I make this decision? Yes. But if less decisions are available to you, does that mean your decisions are less valid? Or do they mean they're more impactful?
It's just that, like, ultimately, we have a phrase in card games that I was very confused by when we first brought it up, which is piloting a deck. And that confused and upset me because I like to think about games where I'm like, I'm making my own choices and they're mine. Nobody can have them.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And when I pilot a deck, if I say me and Noah would make the same decision in the same situation, that's upsetting to me because I didn't make a choice. It was just that the deck, once the deck was given to me, there was a right answer, and we both would have made it.
Is that what the word pilot means to you?
To me, that's what pilot means, as opposed to like play.
So pilot to me just means that you are controlling the outcomes of what's happening.
Interesting.
When you pilot a plane, you're controlling where it's going.
Yeah. I think it's just word association. I think the reality is that I don't hear the word pilot outside of card games, so I associate it as
Well, pilot you pilot mechas.
sure, but I don't.
These guys didn't even go to planes first.
I hate white decks in Pocket Paragon or in Battle Spirits.
It's gotta be good.
I don't need mechas.
Oh, I love battles.
Because to me, I think pilot just means you control it, but to you, it feels like you're following.
Well, I think it's just good
Instructables?
because card games have less agency than fighting games. I play fighting games. I pilot card games.
You pilot the characters.
I mean, yes, I do.
Because you aren't Link, but you're piloting the character Link.
I am piloting Link, and there are fighting games where I do play a girl inside of a robot. So.
Exactly.
Oh, you're actually a mecha.
But that is interesting that you.
I associate the word a lot with not having agency for sure.
So interesting. Okay, but what about the word autopilot? Because
Sure.
to me, what you're describing feels that when you hear pilot, you have the choices made for you. Like, and so that feels like
This actually
autopilot.
is going to be an interesting dialogue because I was going to say autopilot to me is like when I'm playing autopilot in a game, again in a fighting game or a Smash game, I'm just making easy decisions that come quickly to me because I don't want to have to think about the harder choices. I'm like, usually you go autopilot when you're facing somebody bad and you're like, I don't even really need to play the game. I'm just gonna mash 5p and it's gonna beat them.
It's when you and I play Smash.
Yeah, exactly. But when I talk about autopiloting in Digimon, I mean, first of all, half my cards have Greymon written on them, and then it just means like, okay, what choice am I gonna make each turn? And it's like, well, there's 7 cards in hand, and one of them makes sense, and 6 of them don't make sense this turn.
Well,
and then half the red players in our community play the other 6.
Okay, but when you play a purple deck, how often
I'm making a choice every turn. I said draw 3 trash 3. That's 5 choices I made.
Because while I do agree that there have been times where there's one correct decision, there's lots of times where you have multiple decisions to make and it's not as obvious, right?
Yes.
Like, think about this. In the current game state, you go level 3 in the back.
Yeah.
You've got a memory setter in hand. You got a level 4 in hand. You have a training. You got a memory boost. What do you do?
That, you know what? That actually is a good example of a lot of choices.
Training.
Depends what setter.
It's the lowest cost. It searches a card.
Well, it's the same cost as level 4.
Also, a
But
setter.
it reduces your level 4 for the next turn.
And a setter could let me play a boost and a training next turn. Or if they don't have a setter of their own, go into my level 4, play the training,
And choke them to
and
1.
choke them to 1.
So that's what I mean where...
Don't digivolve the rookie. Play the rookie on field, lose it, and then you can't digivolve.
That's what I mean when I say, like, I definitely think that the game isn't autopilot. Like, you have choices like that to make.
There are, but a lot of times your opening hand is not so varied.
Right, but even if you have 2 choices to make, memory setter or champion in the back.
Wait, what's your choice in that 5-card hand?
Depends the matchup, the situation. Like,
Yeah, it really depends on what deck I'm playing and what I'm playing against. I think that...
if the card in hand is in Eismon scatter mode, I'm pretty incentivized.
That's fair.
And yeah, exactly. You want to play
But you
scatter
can play
mode.
the
In Blue
training.
Flare, I'll play Blazing Memory Boost turn 1 every single day of the week.
But you could play the training, find a card for next turn, and reduce the digivolution cost of your champion.
Well, there have been lots of times where I have to choose between a training or a memory setter, and I'd like to set up the memory setter because I want to guarantee my memory next turn. But I also don't have all the cards I need in hand yet. So do I play the training first? But I'm also gonna have the chance to draw at the start of my turn. And what if I training and like grab that card that I was just gonna draw anyway?
Yeah.
You know? So there's those choices that they're like, I like to call them micro decisions.
Yeah.
That build up into the macro of the overall game. And I think a lot of people dismiss them as, I think a common sentiment in when someone starts out playing a card game, any card game, was I couldn't have done anything different.
Yeah.
There was just like,
I was forced.
yeah, luck screwed me over, however you want to go about it. And they don't really take the time to look at the choices they made leading up to that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And I think I was really bad at that when I played Hearthstone.
Do you remember when you and I first started playing together in Digimon? I was getting so mad, and I'd be like, "What did I do wrong to lose there?" And you'd be like, "Nah, man, your security just screwed you. Like sometimes things just suck." And I'm like, "Yeah, but like I want to analyze. I want to look at like what decisions led me down this path. If I had done X instead of Y or whatever, how would the game have ended up?"
Yeah.
No, and there's always something to look back on. And sometimes that something you're looking back on is the fact that there was nothing you could have done differently. Sometimes they turn to OTK you.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to realize it was outside your control. I will say that, so I don't know how you guys feel about this, and this might be bad to state on a ostensibly card game focused podcast.
Go off.
But at the end of the day, I think that the moment I've pile shuffled my deck,
Yeah.
I have lost 99% of my agency.
That's because you get called. Oh, sorry.
99% of my agency occurs in deck building, and once I've sat down to play, if the game goes in a way that me and Noah would make the same choices and have the same outcome, then I don't feel like I had a lot of agency. The number one determinant of the agency there was the shuffle,
Yeah.
and then I came second.
Well, okay.
for you.
I'll give a shout out to someone else in the community because that's our thing now.
Yeah,
Shout out to Hayden. Barely know him.
good guy. No, actually, I'll shout out Hayden. Hayden, you're a good guy, and I know you.
I like him.
Barely know him. I remember first time I met him in a parking lot. I was giving him some Guillemons, I think, some promo
Sure.
Guillemons.
Drug
And he
deal
said,
for Guillemons.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, I've heard about you. And I'm like, from who? How are people hearing about me?
Yeah.
And I've seen him a few times, and then cool guy from what I've seen. And he always has like he likes to hear out people in the Discord.
Yeah.
He likes to hear what people have to say. Because while I don't think that you should blindly listen to what other people have to say, I do think that there's value in listening to what other people have to say and then forming your own opinion. And I think he does that. But the other day he made a comment and said that at most all card games are moderately competitive.
Yeah.
And I think he was using competitive in a way that a lot of people don't view it, but I align with that.
Yeah.
I think that when you start taking skill out of a game, it starts lowering the competitive. Because I can be competitive at roulette, but that doesn't make it a competitive game.
Yeah, like you can do better. So there's an element of this. We mentioned poker for this before, and like poker is fundamentally it's a gambling game. Who wins a given match is there's a layer of skill, but like with all card games, it's the shuffle is what matters most for who wins one game of poker. The skill from poker comes from the bluff, and it comes from risk management. It comes from saying, I'm going to bet this much this game, this much this game. I'm trying to win big, lose low, because I'm going to have a pretty similar number of good and bad hands. But if I, stretch out across an infinite number of hands, I'm going to win against one given opponent an equal number of times. So what I bet, how, and when is what matters, which is why poker controls for that by having a blind. You are forced to bet. The more time you take, the more games you take before you actually start going in, the more the game is going to punish you and say, all right, pay me $5 every time.
Yep.
So I think that that is a competitive experience, and they've just learned what skills they want to measure, because they said the skill that we want to measure of who has a better hand is just not a skill that is going to produce consistent outcomes. The skill that's going to produce consistent outcomes is who's better at winning successive hands and tricking their opponent into thinking they're going to win when they're not going to win. Here's my takeaway, because Noah, you mentioned micro decisions being like a major part of decision making that you seem to value more. Would you say?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So Jeremiah, I heard you say that less options can create more interesting choices. So do you not actually like those micro decisions? Do you want like fewer big decisions to occur?
Well, sometimes I think that like just having more options available to you is not necessarily going to mean your choices are more impactful.
No, in fact, I think the more micro decisions you're making, I'd imagine each one is less impactful on its own, at least.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a lot of decisions available to you, that's nice, but first of all, it makes it less likely that you're making the correct or more ideal choice in each scenario, but just because there's more decisions being made, it doesn't mean that they're more impactful decisions. They're just things that you can do.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, at the end of the day, if I have 18 Digimon cards in hand, I presumably have at least 18 plays available.
It's like when you're revealing cards from searching a card in the memory boost, and you're like, I'm going to order them this way just in case I get to those last 3 cards in my deck, and I end up drawing in the order that I want to.
Yeah.
There's a couple decks that'll make it to deck out. I mean, you're drawing through your deck a lot in the game, but that is a very small decision that I'd say doesn't come up as often as like we'd expect it to, but we still want to make that choice, even though it might not be that impactful.
Well, you have to think about it now. Like, decks are running memory boosts and trainings and searchers, and so the first search of a game, those cards are probably moving up to the middle of your deck. Like, you're probably hitting those cards again. Maybe not for something like security control, where you're at most drawing 1 card a turn.
Blade of the True.
Yeah. But for a lot of other decks now, like, those decisions that how you order those cards you put at the bottom are impactful. It's always been impactful.
But it's become more impactful
Yeah.
over time. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. Well, what makes me feel funny about Digimon in particular, this is a little bit less related to agency as a general concept, but in Digimon in particular, I often get hit with a sensation where I'll reveal top 4 cards of my deck, and I go, it doesn't make sense for me to grab that level 6 right now because, whatever, I don't have the line, or I need card draw and take my level 4. But like, there's some reason that's going to encourage me to put my Diaboromon Ace at the bottom of my deck.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm filled with a sensation of, so I don't have a Diaboromon Ace in my hand. So I want to put it at the top of the pile because I want to, get to a Diaboromon Ace as fast as possible. There's 3 other Diaboromon Aces in the deck. I'm going to find them before I get back down to it.
Yeah.
So even though I don't have my level 6 in hand, when I reveal a level 6 in my first draw and I don't take it, I often put it at the bottom of the pile.
That's interesting because I think that as you get to that late game where you're nearing the bottom of your deck, or you cycle through even halfway through your deck, I feel like I'd rather have multiple megas at that point because, I mean, the game is in a much different state than it used to be, where by the time you've gotten to your first mega, you should have probably won. But now, like, back in the day, I would put it to the top because as you get deeper into the game, similar to like something like Magic, right?
Yeah.
You'd want to put your higher statted, higher mana cost minions near the top, right? Because as you get into the late game, you know that this card, I mean,
I
Magic's a
promise
bad
you,
example 'cause you shuffle.
I promise you, well, even without shuffling, I promise you, if you put a card at the bottom of your deck, you're not seeing it again.
Yeah.
Right, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
That you would
want to
rather
float it up
yeah,
sooner, yeah.
because the deeper you get into the late game, the more you can spend. And that concept semi applies to Digimon, even though you don't have more mana to spend, you have more resources available to you.
Yeah, you might have more Digimon on field, you might have a higher level on average.
Your mega might be like your way to actually win the game, like the way you close things out. Like, you might be closer to winning by playing your mega at that point.
But I do think that something like ordering the bottom of your deck, which I would consider a micro decision, is something that a lot of people, maybe a lot of newer players, don't bother doing.
Yeah.
No.
And then maybe they cycle through their deck and they're 1 card off that they could have put at the top, and they lose and they say there's nothing I could have done.
So there you go.
You know?
That. Maybe you would have drawn the better card you wanted.
And there's like those decisions like, do I play a memory setter now? Or do I play a search card? Do I digivolve on the back? Those decisions, while they may seem insignificant, they really change the course of the game.
So you think there are like more decisions being made and their impact might be small in a vacuum, but they're still...
They start to compound.
They compound.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think that's kind of similar to why I enjoy micro decisions as well, and it's same thing with why I enjoy deck building. The reality is adding 1 more copy of a card can have a big impact on what my expectation of how quickly I see it, how frequently I see it, and like, depending on how necessary it is to my deck, like whether I can find outs.
Isn't fighting games also largely a lot of like micro decisions?
For sure. I mean, the reality is again, taken to its ideal form is an overstatement, but every frame, so 60 times a second, you are making a micro decision. Obviously taken to an extreme, but even taken to a much smaller portion of it, choosing to hold forward for an additional few frames compared to what somebody else in the same position would do, that's the basis of shimmying and footsies and playing within my opponent's threat range. So even though it feels like, oh, it's only a couple frames of doing a certain action, those certain frames define play styles and really help with in terms of player expression. It's so funny, we've gotten so deep into this conversation about agency. What I value is the ability to express myself, to say, I am playing the way that I want to play, and it's meaningfully different from how somebody else would play. And I've alluded to that idea, but really that's what it comes down to. I really want to see myself in the game.
And it's funny because you mentioned piloting, and you said that if I would play the same way that you would play, then there's really no skill expression or agency, right?
Less, yeah.
But almost every time I watch you play or you watch me play, we're always so confused by each other's actions, and we play so wildly different. Even playing the
we
same
do.
game.
There's a certain element of I think sometimes it can be easy to think of things through like their idealized form, like, oh, we're all playing, like machines the perfect way, and the reality is we're not. I mean, even though I see Digimon as like less agency than fighting games, we're not playing identically. It's more just the fear of the boogeyman of what if we're playing identically that can be upsetting. And it's why I stray away from decks where there are fewer meaningful choices to make. Purple, listen, you can like purple or not. You got to make a lot of choices.
You do, yeah.
Like I would say that you make more choices than any other color as a blanket statement.
I mean, you guys look at a lot of the ways that I play, and you question like why I'm doing certain things. And then when I explain my thought process to you, you're like, I see why you're thinking that way,
but
here's why I don't think that's as beneficial as doing it this way. And like the fact that conversation exists is, I think that's like maybe not unique to card games, but very, very, it's very, very important to what card games represent. Is, like you said, expression and problem solving in different ways to reach an end goal. Understanding the core identity of like a strategy and being like, how can I still perform actions to work towards this strategy, while also making like informed decisions that feel good to me, right? There's going to be obviously like more decisions that are like better for what the deck wants to do. But as long as you understand, like, okay, I'm playing a red deck, I want to go fast, and you're
red deck wins.
You're like, yeah, you're like, I'm gonna attack, I'm gonna turn my card sideways, deal them some damage. Like, you know what? It's not like wrong, but you have to think of it on a greater scale of like tempo. You have to think about like how your opponent can get back to you or come back at you. How can they remove your card on the field? Was it valuable to deal them the damage at that point? A lot of factors go into play into even just a small thing like that. Like, we always talk about how red decks don't take a lot of skill, but there are skill testing decisions to be made playing red. And like, one player that has a better understanding of a game or a certain deck archetype will play it vastly differently than a player who understands the general concept. Even though these players are maybe describing the same thing, they're looking at it in very different ways. Yeah, I think that's pretty unique to card games.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely a lot left on the table. There's definitely some choices, some micro decisions we made about what to go over, but I think for right now, I think we'll call it there on our conversation on agency.
Yeah, this is.
I think obviously they already know that we're in the EDT time zone, that we originated in the Hamilton Digimon community, and we're literally 40 minutes northeast drive. Because you know what, at the end of the day, I think that eagle-eared listeners deserve to find us.
But you're making it so they don't have to be eagle-eared.
Well, I also wanted them to feel like
now we're
rewarded. We're looping.
Go hang out at Ian's house, guys. It's all good.
I want to have a discussion about changing the ending of our podcast.
You want me to say night, guys?
Yeah. Why are we saying night? Because it's night right now.
Lord Nightmon.
Lord Nightmon, yeah.
Think about all the people that are listening to it during the day.
I didn't say night, guys, for like the last 2 episodes. It was making me feel bad.
I was making you feel bad?
No, I was feeling bad.
You weren't doing
it. My heroin fix was like not being reached.
Oh my goodness. I think we need to come up with a better conclusion. Like just like a goodbye or something, or take care, salutations,
Salutations.
peace and love.
Farewell, listeners.
Yeah. I just don't like implying that it's like starting off the podcast with like, good morning, everybody.
It's 10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
What kind of morning?
Yeah, where do you know where your kids are?
End it with a good afternoon. I don't know if you watched Spirited, the Christmas movie that
It's
Ryan
the,
Reynolds and Will Ferrell made.
Oh, I do know. Yeah.
And in it, good afternoon is intended to be like
Was
F you.
Was the opposite of digital gate open?
Digital gate closed.
Yeah.
Analog gate closed.
Analog
Man.
Analog wall.
Yeah.
Analog wall closed.
This is the Errata Sonata signing out. Oh no, that's awful.
Signing off for now. Ta-ta for now. TTYL.
Talk to you later.
I think we have an established pattern.
I don't like Night Guys. I want to put it on the table. That's why we're talking
Let's
about.
say, let's say Nightmon.
All right.
All right, Lord Night Guys.
All right, Nightmons.
Nightmon.
No, don't end it there.